Welcome to the STEM Road Podcast. I'm Jerry Cabrera, President and CEO of Elevate Southwest, and this podcast host. In each episode, we'll talk with an industry expert who shares their career experiences and insights, and we'll also introduce a student who is starting their own journey in the same or similar field, providing a fresh perspective on the future of the industry. Our mission is to uncover the diverse pathways to success in post-secondary education, providing inspiration and guidance for anyone interested in STEM careers. So join us in the STEM Road as we explore the remarkable journeys of those paving the way and elevating the future of STEM. Welcome to the STEM Road Podcast. My name is Jerry Cabrera, President and CEO, and we have Melina Conroy, our Chief Officer. And we have two special guests on this STEM Road Podcast of Financial Futures. I've known Tom for a couple of years now. His name is Tom Rush and Jackson Takesuye, correct?
Yep.
All right. These are great guys coming here and show us a little bit about the financial world, and maybe they'll tell us where to invest too. Money is always part of STEM, right, Tom?
Money makes the world go around, right?
That's about from Yuma to the world, right? So, Tom, tell us a little bit about your company and what you do there.
Sure. So I'm a financial advisor by day. I'm also been in the business for about 30 years. And our office has financial advisors, paraplanners, staff, and we manage about $500 million, mostly Yuma money. And we basically work with people on trying to get from point A to point B and hopefully retire with confidence. That's our goal.
And the name of the company is?
Yuma and Imperial Valley Wealth Management.
So that just recently changed because it was just Yuma, right?
Yeah,
Yuma
it was Yuma Investment Group, but we've opened an office in El Centro, and that would be a good idea to change the name, include this whole valley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Jackson?
I am currently a master's student right now. I'm studying global management. My undergrad degree was in finance and sustainability. I run a small business on the side when I'm not doing school, but finance has always been, I guess, kind of a central part of my life because I've been doing that for 8 or 9 years now. So it's always something I've had to think about, and going through my studies has just further solidified that's I think what I want to do with my future. And nothing's set in stone, obviously, but it's really cool to be working with Tom and all the other advisors over there and just getting to learn every day.
So you're getting your master's degree.
Yes.
Is that what you're working on?
Yeah.
How about yourself, Tom? What are your degrees? And actually, one thing, where did you grow up?
Yeah.
Other than your degree as well.
Yeah. So I was actually raised out in Dateland, which is about 70 miles east of Yuma, and Dad was one of the farm managers out there. There was 7 of us kids. I was number 4, and had a great childhood. I mean, we were hunting, fishing, driving with no adults at 8, 9 years old.
The fun life.
So we knew how to take risk, right? But it was good. And then from there, I went to high school at Brophy in Phoenix, which is a Jesuit high school. And then I got into Amherst College back in Massachusetts, lucky enough to go there. Academically, it was a great school. I was also fortunate to play some Division III football and got my economics degree. So I took a bunch of different classes and tried to figure out what I was going to major in. But economics, right when I got into my first class, I realized, hey, I like this. This is something I can understand. You also look at the history of economics as studying the past. It's also the present, and then I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And things do change. I mean, we'll talk a little bit probably about AI, artificial intelligence.
Oh, yes.
Because that's affecting everybody. But economics was kind of maybe like Jackson. Once I realized, hey, that's what I like to do, I was all in.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now I want to turn it over to Jackson and kind of hear a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and then I think Tom shared a few insights of things that we might not know about him if you just read his bio. So kind of share something insightful for everyone here that people might not just understand or know from reading your resume or your bio.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up kind of all around the West Coast, starting out because I was born in Phoenix. I come from a Navy family. My dad was in the Navy, so I grew up mostly in California, a little bit in Washington, and then moved out to Yuma for high school. So I'm a Gila Ridge guy. Go Hawks. And then after that, I went out to Arizona State for my undergrad. And again, that's where I got my degrees, and now I'm at Thunderbird. But I love playing guitar in my free time. I don't like calling myself a musician because I really don't think I'm that good, but I'll write songs from time to time and play for family and whatnot. And I love that. That's probably my favorite thing to do on my free time. But yeah, I mean,
And then you double majored, right? Or you
Yeah.
kind of got a degree in finance and sustainability?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. And what led you to pursuing that degree?
Yeah, so originally my degree was marketing, and before, like, I only chose marketing going into college because they didn't have an advertising degree. I thought that was something ASU would have, and I kind of was dead set, like in high school. I was like, I'm gonna do ads, I'm gonna be an advertiser, because that was just always something I had loved to do, and I think that kind of ties in with like the business that I kind of operate. I sell like vintage clothes, and in high school it was more so like sneakers. You know, most you hear about kids like selling Jordans and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That was something I did from like, I think I started out at like 12 or 13. So I was doing it for a while. And it was always like, how can you make your product look the best and get people to want to buy it?
An entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur here,
from a young
yes.
age.
So actually, rear view mirror, Tom, because I know a little bit of this story, but I would love for people to realize the actual story that occurred as you started. Looking back on where you've been and how this started. Obviously, you went to school and the degrees and stuff. But I think one important thing is realizing when you start a business, it is difficult, but the time and hard work pay off. So tell us a little bit about that story of when you started.
Sure. So I've been fortunate, and doors open for you. Sometimes you got to kick them open, but they open. So I actually got hired up at Dean Witter up in Phoenix, it's now Morgan Stanley, and they didn't hire me. They said, well, you don't have experience, you're not licensed, go work somewhere else for 3 years and we'll hire you. So I was walking out. One of the advisors, I was all dressed up, said, hey, are you looking for a job? Yes. What do you know about the financial industry? And I said, really nothing. He goes, well, I can hire you. Won't be a lot of money, but I'll show you everything. And I said, okay. So worked for this gentleman for 6 or 9 months at minimum wage. Student loans were kicking in after 9 months. And basically this guy showed me the ropes and showed me how to do it. And more importantly, I bumped up to the boss, and they eventually hired me. So I was very fortunate to be hired at late 21 as a financial advisor, because the average advisor is usually about late mid 30s or early 30s. So I got out at Morgan Stanley, and then that opening in Yuma, and I raised my hand because I was familiar with Yuma and came down here. There's only 3 of us in the office down here, and then from there I was there for 5 years, and I got recruited to go to open Merrill Lynch. So Merrill Lynch wanted to come to Yuma, and I started working with them. Left Morgan Stanley. And hit, they had all these goals and that, so you hit the goals and such. But anyways, my boss called me, and 2000 was a bad year. That was a pretty down year. And they shut down every office in Arizona that had less than 10 advisors. So Flagstaff had an office, Prescott had an office, Yuma had Dean Witter and Merrill Lynch. But anyways, I got the call from my Merrill Lynch manager and said, hey, we're thinking of closing the office. You can come work in Tucson, we'll keep you going. But we'll kind of give you a little heads up. And at that point, the lights went on that closing the office, although it was, maybe. So my wife had 2 kids at the house. My wife was a teacher that decided to stay home to take care of the kids. And I told my wife, I said, hey, get any credit card that comes in, apply for it. 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. And we got a lot of credit cards, every day in the mail. So make a long story short, I didn't have a lot of money to start the business, but I negotiated a deal with Merrill Lynch to take over their office, take over the lease, bought all the furniture, and it was a bigger office than what I needed. But anyways, I started my adventure on credit cards. So ultimately, what would happen on a typical, for about a month straight, I'd wake up about, 1:30 in the morning, you can't sleep. And I think I have some pretty good nerves, but at that point, I usually go in the bathroom and I'd actually throw up in the morning, and because of nerves and realizing you're in a position, and then I'd go to work and probably come home at like 7 at night. So I was doing all the paperwork, and I had an assistant helping me. But ultimately, the credit cards started stacking up, and we only get paid as money comes to our firm, and that takes a while. But anyways, as we got closer to getting to the limit we had about 120,000 of credit cards, and we got to about 85,000. My wife kind of knew what I was doing and said, hey, this isn't looking good. Like, we might go under or go bankrupt. I said, well, I'm 29 years old and I could figure something else out. But we barely made the credit card play, and then the revenue came in. So it was a struggling time frame. But like my wife said, she told me that she followed me because I had faith. I mean, I was like, no, we could do this, we can do that. So if I probably showed her more doubt, she probably would have pulled the plug and said, we're not going to do that. But it all worked out.
So with with all that struggles, has that shaped your clients and what you do with them, and in terms of the financial world itself?
Yeah, I mean, it really has been a journey because, starting out, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, in the beginning, you can pick mutual funds and figure out what people want to do, stocks or bonds. But now it's got a lot more technical, a lot of software programs that you can take, figuring out how much risk someone's willing to take. Because you and I in the old days would talk for an hour, and I'd be like, "Oh, Jerry wants to take this much risk," but it's really not. Or you're telling me, yeah, let's take risk. Second, you lose a lot of money, you want out. Well, that's not a risk taker, even though you're verbally telling me we're going to take risks. So we have software program, it's called Nitrogen, that basically comes up with some kind of risk number. And to me, that's a huge plus because it kind of tells you the high and the low of what people can afford to make and lose. And I focus on the losing part because that's usually emotionally where people fall apart on. And then with the software, financial planning, and I was saying AI is coming into our business. After meetings, we'd spend 20, 30 minutes putting in notes and talking about what we talked about in the meeting. And now we have a software program called Zox. Turn it on, and it pretty much paraphrases everything. And then you can go in and change it. But now it's taken us 5 minutes to do meeting notes because it's all there and we can, look at it. So it's changing. I think for the better.
Just a tool, just another tool.
Just another tool, yep. And people always ask, will our industry be, eventually taken over by AI or robots or that? And I think the answer is no, because we're in a people business, and basically people will always want an opinion and someone to talk to. And really, about half of the time, we're almost like money shrinks, talking people off the ledge.
I like that name, money shrinks.
Yeah. Talking people off the ledge of not getting out when they shouldn't, or they want to get in because the market's all-time high and the internet stocks are going nuts. We should buy internet stocks. So it's part being a money shrink, part being a teacher, because you do want to educate people and not just say, hey, do it this way because that's how I say to do it. And then over time, as you educate them, they get better clients because they don't get as in and out. But I would say the big thing has just been technology. In the old days, real quick, I had to write a ticket out to buy something on a little piece of paper. I'd fax it into Phoenix, and then Phoenix would get it. And I didn't know if it was even bought or not. Within like an hour later, I wouldn't know. And then eventually they would send a fax back to me and say, you bought 50 shares of Home Depot. And that was the old way of doing it. So now it's like click, 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 done. I mean, just the whole industry has changed.
Yeah, technology and young talent coming in the pipeline. I know we kind of mentioned that Jackson is interning, right? He's doing his summer internship here with you in your firm. But I know we kind of just started talking about your early days of entrepreneurship. And I know that because you are through our internship program, I also have a bit more of like insider information. We've talked before, and you've shared that even at one point you were even going into medical school or you were thinking about it. And I know you talked about you started in like ads and marketing. So how did all of these different experiences lead you into finance and sustainability?
Yeah. So for me, I think I consider myself a little bit of an overthinker and maybe a worrier about like the future. Just when things like aren't certain, I feel like I fall apart a little bit. And so I'm also a bit of a planner. And so for me, the process that I kind of viewed career searching for was a process of elimination, not like, because I didn't have this dream job from childhood that I really stuck with, I guess. And so it was more so finding out what's a likely pathway for me to go in and what do I not want to do. And so I tried to do a lot of internships. I ended up landing a lot of sales jobs. I worked in AI sales for a company out in Scottsdale called Paradox. That was a good learning experience, and I found out that I love talking to people. I'm good, with, I guess, people management, but I don't like the idea of like selling on the phone. And so that was something that I kind of ruled out. And I, kind of further fell down the finance rabbit hole. And I was really lucky to have found great professors at Thunderbird that really knew how to engage me, because I, am not always I find myself drifting sometimes if I don't think something's super interesting. And so having professors that can teach me about different topics within finance, like venture capital, private equity, ESG investing, even just stuff that I wouldn't normally think to search for myself, and have them explain it to me and break it down and make it, interesting. Like, what would you do in this situation? How would you invest this money, or how would you bear this risk? That really, kind of fish hooked me a little bit and made me, I guess, fall deeper into that rabbit hole. And I'm really excited to see where it leads, I guess. Yeah.
And I think there's two things that stand out from, what you just shared. Is one is that it's a really common theme. I think a lot of people can resonate with that, is that we think we might be going into a certain, path in our lives, both professionally and personally at times, and things change, and you need to adapt and be open-minded. So I love that, I know Jerry and myself both have very different backgrounds from what we studied and now what we're currently doing. But I personally love that. I love kind of shifting gears and trying different things that are exciting and challenging. And also you talked about, your social skills and loving, talking to people. I know you mentioned that that's one of the things that why AI won't be replacing a lot of jobs in the financial sector. For as much as, a lot of people might think of finances as very rigid, very, just numbers and things like that. But it's not just numbers and understanding how numbers work. A lot of it is understanding how people work. So and you mentioned that as well, as even with startups, it's sometimes you're investing in the people, not always just the idea behind that. So I thank you for sharing those insights.
I was talking to one of my buddies who's in the insurance business, and I think what AI is going to do for that industry, also with our industry, is let us cover a lot more, have a lot more clients. And basically, maybe if an insurance agent was maxed out at 1,000 households. Now with AI, you could do 2,000 households. So I think a lot's going to happen in our industry where we're going to have more things where we can basically have more relationships and let some of the the stuff that takes time be done by AI or robotics or something.
Mm-hmm.
What since your experiences, both of you had different experiences, and actually you have a startup too, which is kind of cool to listen to. But Tom, I mean, from your experiences from way when you started to now, and now you're expanded, right? What kind of advice would you give Jackson here in terms of not only life in general, right, but the business aspect of the financial world?
Well,
or anybody that's listening out there, not has to be just Jackson, right? But
yeah, I mean, I still think you got to do something that isn't work. And I was looking at Jackson's first question is, how do you combat burnout? Yeah. And reality is, I mean, I was, especially when I was starting out, I was working long hours, but I never felt like I was working, for nobody. I mean, I was working for myself. So if you really enjoy something, that it's not work. And then I think you do a better job, and then you start reaping some of the rewards. But my advice to younger people would be to try to find what your passion is early on, because you see people that jump around to 3 or 4 different industries, and we can, I know your little history. You've done different things in the past to get to this point. Well, I was lucky enough to get 21 years of age to be in the area I thought I should be in, and that made a huge difference because, by jumping around, and I know experience, might open doors for something else, but I would say try to focus in on what you want to do. Now, my experience is a little different from his, and I wish my professors, talked more about what to do. I would come back in the summer and work in the fields, and that was quick money. So I was looking for the quick money so I can go back to school and have some money. So I never did any interns or that. And then when I went up to Phoenix to find a real job, because I knew it wouldn't be a lot of jobs, I just did resumes, and I went to every up and down buildings, title company, insurance company, and I just want a job, right? And probably like when most of you guys get a job, you just want a job. So these younger guys are getting a lot more focused and probably thinking about this a lot more than we did, because the reality is we probably didn't get as much detail and figure out what rabbit hole to go down. So that's a plus for the younger generation. I think you guys seem to have more compassion on like, what do you want to do? Well, our generation, they kind of said, you're doing this and here's your pay and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
So if you fell in the right area, it worked out. But so I guess my thing is try to figure out what you're passionate about, because it's not work.
I would like to add to that. I think it's really important to figure out your passions, but also figure out your skill set. Like, what comes naturally? What skills do you naturally possess? I think you mentioned, through that sales job, you realize, okay, I'm good at talking to people. I'm good with, clients, or just kind of those social skills that might come naturally to you, and really, learn to take advantage of those skills that you possess, and, to a certain extent, exploit those skills, right? You really, to take them to where you need to get to succeed in that career path.
It's important to realize as well what you're not skilled at. Even if you try it and this is not for you, it's fine. And it's always good to change early on than after the fact that you're 2-3 years into college and realizing this was not for me. So that's important too, to realize that as well.
Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, how many college kids have gotten degrees, try it for a year, and they don't like it. And I got a nephew now that is now getting another degree because he didn't like his original work thing. So yeah, it's important not to find what you like and not to make too many mistakes. And time is money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why we established our internship program is, in Jackson's case, you're already, further along in your educational, pathway, but a lot of these students, whether they're in high school or at a community college, they're still trying to, they might have an idea, I want to go into finance, or I want to go into healthcare. And then they get their feet wet and they start testing the waters, and they're like, oh, this isn't maybe what I had in mind. I thought it was going to look differently, because maybe your perception of it is based on, a television series or something like that. So I think with the internship program, a part of the reason why we created it to begin with was for the students to get exposed and get, hands-on experience early on before they get, 2-3 years down the line in their program at school.
Jackson, so do you have any questions for the man, the myth, Tom here?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I got a list right here. I did want to touch on what you guys, what all three of you were saying. And this is kind of, I guess, just a useful piece of advice for other students or just people that kind of find themselves in a similar spot that I am or was in. Earlier, this was at the beginning of the year, over New Year's, I was at a family reunion, just a little New Year's party, and I was talking to one of my relatives, and he's a wealth advisor up in Washington, and I was asking him, I was a little bit confused on career trajectory at that point. I was getting a little bit stressed, and but I just asked him, I guess, for guidance, and he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I told him, so I think I want to work in finance. That's what my degree's in. I feel like I'm good at, I'm good at math. I'm good at all this. And it'd be easy to work, in different industries for finance. Like I could work at a record label doing their finances. That's something that I like. And he told me, and this is a really useful piece of advice. He said, figure out again, don't think about what industry you want to end up in. Think about what skills, or what job functions, I guess, make you happy as a person, because you could be doing finance in the music industry, but if you actually hate finance, you're going to hate working in this industry that you thought you loved. And so, figuring that out, and again, this took another semester to kind of hammer out, but realize that I don't think that it really matters what industry I work in, but I think a more people-focused section of finance, like, wealth management or advising, is something that I would enjoy, because it's something that, talking to people doesn't feel like work to me. And it's kind of always been that way. So that's something that I just had to, kind of learn for myself.
So in our industry, a couple of my college buddies were also econ majors, and they basically had different jobs, mainly in Boston and New York. But there's so many different products up top and how they do stuff, make stuff. Well, if you go down the filter, we're at the very bottom of the filter, and we're dealing with ma and pa. So it's kind of a nice thing to do in some degree, because you can make the coolest product up top or some kind of a investment product or whatever, but if it can't go down and be, bought at that level or understood at that level, so I kind of enjoyed it, really, because it is, a lot of times our meetings are just having discussions and talking about, this or that, or look at it this way, look at it that way. I think I understand what you're trying to say. So, I like to say we're at the bottom of the filter, working with the business owner or the person on their investments. And a lot of times it's done at a very simple level, because a lot of people don't need the details of what a derivative is, or what is an investment that's leveraged and stuff like that. They just want to know, Like, here's what I'm trying to do. How do I get there and such. But I will say, being a entrepreneur, I had 3 jobs before I got out of college. Not 3 jobs. Well, started 3 different kinds of businesses before I got out of college. And I think that made a big impact because you start thinking of different ways to, okay, that didn't work so well, but how do I do it this way if that didn't work so well? So I think this is the best country in the world to do what you want to do. And really, and I'm not saying wealth is everything, but if that's your goal to make a lot of money or that, it's very doable to do it. I mean, I think one thing that the younger generation might be missing out a little bit more, in my opinion, is the risk side. Because a lot of times when you take these big leaps to do something big, there's a risk factor. And a lot of times, if you're not willing to take the risk factor, then you probably take the conservative route, which means you're not going to jump as high as you could have. So that's one thing I think the younger generation can try to, I don't know what exercise you can use to do, but take some risk out there, especially when you're young. Worst case scenario, dust yourself off and you start over again, or you do something different.
I think that's very important. I think that's very important, especially for the even it doesn't have to be young. It's just anyone in life, as they're moving through life and trying to figure out certain things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's something I have to handle pretty much on a daily basis. Is how much risk am I fronting when I'm buying inventory, doing this, doing that. And I think something that helped me out, and again, this is a word of advice from my professor that kind of taught a venture capital classes. He was like, build your own insurance plan. So, if you're investing $100,000 in seed money into a venture capital, company or a startup, see if you can play with some leverage. Get money from the bank. Pool investors. So it's not just your money on the line. I guess it gives you more to play with and more upside.
OPM, other people money.
Other people money, and writing insurance policies and just actually doing research before taking risks, because I think and this is something that I've done personally. Is I'll see an opportunity, I'll think that's the thing. Like, I got to jump on this right now, and I might have been hasty and I wouldn't have needed to actually jump on that right at that moment. There was time to do research and I guess weigh my options, and that turned out to not be the right one for me because I didn't research what the implications would be, I guess.
So Jackson, now that you heard Tom and he left and came back, you did the same thing at this point, right? Because you have family here, correct?
Yeah.
So what are your plans after graduation?
So again, that's something where I really don't know for sure. Coming back to Yuma is definitely an option. It's always nice being close to family. That's why I went to Arizona State, just because my family's close, and that's something I value. So I really can't say for sure, but Arizona, Phoenix, Yuma, anything in the Southwest, and just hopefully doing something that I love.
So you're also a sustainability student, right? So what kind of impact do you want to make?
Yeah, I think it was a business sustainability degree, and I honestly took that more so because that was something that I just found an interest in personally. I've always been like the person that'll run back and like pick up somebody else's trash and throw it away, just because it's kind of bothered me, and it's felt like such a why not do it if it's such a small effort, or inconvenience, I guess, if you want to phrase it like that. But I debated becoming like a sustainability analyst for a little while, sustainability reporting, stuff like that. But I think there are ways to tie in both. Like there's ESG, investing where you can buy green bonds, do stuff like that, or just invest in companies that, really value sustainability. Like if you think about like Patagonia, they are, ESG is kind of in their core principles, and it has been for 40, 50 years. And they're really profitable, and a lot of it's because they've built their company on those values that they believe in, and that's attracted, a consumer base that I guess their ethos is tied together. Mm-hmm. So there's ways to do it, and it's pretty cool. But yeah.
But I don't know if you meant to do this on purpose, but you also jumped in front of the green wave, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, 10 years or maybe 15, like there wasn't much green. Mm-hmm. So that was another good idea to get exposed to that, mm-hmm. because that was where things were moving, and maybe still are. Depends on what direction. But I think anytime you get in front of a movement, or I'm not going to say a fad, but actually a movement, there's higher chances of success. Mm-hmm. So good for you to get exposed to that, because that could open doors that people might not be able to do in the future or not know the opportunity.
And it can be incorporated in a lot of different fields, right? My major at ASU was in a tourism development and management, and I took a lot of courses that were heavy on like sustainable tourism and practices and management and things like that. So it's neat to see how it can also be incorporated in the financial sector. But I know a lot of our audience they're still trying to, understand what a lot of these careers look like. So I wanted to see, what does a day in the life look like for Mr. Tom Rush here at Yuma Imperial Valley Wealth Management Group? Did I get that right? I know it's really long, so I'm like, right. I'm always like trying to make sure I.
So I'm kind of juggling between meeting with clients throughout the day. Today I had 3 client meetings, went over their accounts and such, the financial plan. But then I'm also have a foot in, people and managing people. And there's other people in the office that support me on this. So it's kind of a juggling act at this point. But I still get excited about talking to people. I just found this weekend I had a business owner come in. He has 2-3 different businesses, young guy, 30 years old, really making a pretty big impact on what he's doing, like money-wise. And I was impressed, but I love finding someone like that. And I know when I started out, it took me 10 years to get to a certain point financially, even when I was working with Dean Witter and Merrill Lynch. But if you can get a mentor and someone who can kind of guide you, you can get there in 2 or 3 or 4 years, at least, with the right advice. Nothing's ever 100%, but I would, at this point, I'm kind of a mentor in the office for either the younger advisors or even for clients, business owners. Just 30 years of experience, you got a lot of things you can talk about. But I would tell people that are interested in our industry, I always tell people everyone has a money problem. Either you got too much, you got to figure out what to do with it, or you got too little, which means you got to do something to get more. So everyone has a money problem. Unlike, for example, if Jerry was a car salesman, I might buy a car every 5-6 years. So my need for him is every 5 or 6 years. Well, the good thing about money is everyone, even in this room, needs help. So the question is, do they want to take the help? Some people do. Some people don't. Put the head in the sand and hope someday it's all going to come together. Also, another cool thing about our industry is we can find people anywhere. I could be at a wedding reception, meet someone. I could be getting in line for Starbucks, have a conversation. And so it's really one of those things where you don't have to be, in the actual dealership selling cars, and that's, your car sales guy. You can be anywhere, and you can work with people or talk to people. So I like that, actually. It's
You're an extrovert.
Like, you can be on a podcast, and I can take advantage here of the situation. Be like, okay, Tom, so how can I get more money?
I have $1. I want to make it to 2. Yeah.
I will say that most Americans are underfunded. A lot of them rely on Social Security, and that's going to cover about 40% of what they probably need. So the reality, and Social Security only goes up like 1.5% per year on average. So if they don't have another game plan, like they probably will have a pretty tough retirement. I mean, I'm talking about enjoying and reaping the rewards of hard work. So sooner people can get started and figure out a game plan, the better off they're going to be. And then Einstein once said compounding interest is the I think 11th wonder of the world, and it truly is. So if you can start younger, it happens a lot quicker than starting when you're 35 or 40, which most people start getting serious at 40. So
that's great advice. Definitely take into account.
So I still have a couple of years to get serious about my finances then.
Well, the longer you wait, the more you have to put away.
Correct.
So, when you're younger, maybe $200 a month isn't as bad, but if you wait till you're 40, now it's $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And that becomes a little bit harder to swallow, especially you got kids and family. And at that point, so anyways, it's definitely something to think about. And the biggest advice I could tell people is don't put your head in the sand, because everyone, even people you see, like I went to, if I talk to someone, I was going to come see you like 3 years ago, but I never did, never picked up the phone. Okay, well, that was just 3 years of basically where you could have gotten in a better position, at least had a plan. So don't be afraid to tackle the problem, even if the results are terrible. Sometimes we've got to tell people, you will never probably retire unless you do something, but hopefully there's enough action where they can do something.
But that goes into life too, in terms of trying to figure out a pathway, a career pathway, right? Because it's just taking that risk and making sure that if the door is open, try to go in and find out if you like it or not. I think it's a great important aspect of learning life in general.
Yeah.
What may go right or might go wrong.
Sure. So he was talking about sales. When I started at Dean Witter, we would call people on the phone. They didn't know who we were. We were selling like municipal bonds out of retirees in Sun City. And basically, you'd call about 200 people a day. But you can tell on the phone you can tell when someone's, not listening to you or just wants you off the phone. And you can say little things that would keep them on the phone and not. But anyways, it's the sales thing is interesting because if you're good in sales, I don't care what industry you're in, you're probably going to do well. No. And it's a communication game. And it's reading someone's face and saying no means no today doesn't mean no tomorrow. A lot of times people in sales, they just don't like getting beat up like when you did your sales over the phone. And it's no, 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 no. And then you get a yes, but everyone hates the 20 no's to get a yes. So I found it kind of amusing because I spent most of my time working out in the fields, making money through 8th grade to college because that's the quickest way to make money. So to me, being inside, picking up the phone, like air conditioning, I could go get some water. Like that was not work. So I liked it. To me, it was a game too, because some people it's kind of like a chess move. They tell you this, well, you tell them that. If they tell you this, you tell them that, and it doesn't always work out. But it's definitely a numbers game, and if you don't play the numbers game, you will fail. And I think the gentleman who trained me at Dean Witter, the advisor that took me in, if I would have done this by myself, I'm pretty sure I would have failed. Because after so many no's, you're like, okay, I'm not good at this. I'm going to go try something else. So he gave me the mental mindset of what to do, how to do it, and it helped out a lot. So
Jackson, so has Tom done great there at the office with you, mentoring you?
Yeah, no, Tom's been great. He's let me sit in on a couple reviews and really gain exposure to what it's like, I guess, in his role. Because obviously, as an intern, I'm not handling people's money. I'm legally not allowed to. I'd be more worried if Tom let me handle people's money. But yeah, no, getting to actually, I guess, see firsthand how he, he's been in the industry for a long time, how he interacts with these people who he's built relationships with over the years. And it was a really cool thing to see. He I forgot her name, but she spoke with I believe she was 88 or 89-year-old woman came in, and it was, not her first review with Tom, but getting to watch him see like, hey, your assets have grown this much. They're going to continue rolling into the next, 10 years, and you're going to leave your family with all of this. That was, to me, a really, kind of impactful thing because he showed her, he gave her confidence that, she made the right decision. And he was actually able to help her grow her money over, X amount of years. And so it's been really cool.
Sometimes you got to tell people, spend more money. Like, I mean, you're going to take it to the grave, and here's how much you're going to take. So enjoy life. Take your grandkids out to beach or something. And then people want to hear that. I mean,
absolutely.
Because I've had a lot of people come in a wheelchair, oxygen tank, and say, I got all this money and I can't do anything. Like I literally homebound or close to it. So, but these interns, what I want them to understand is a day-to-day basis, like what does an advisor do? And half of our day is spent with talking to clients and getting to know what they're trying to do. And like that person's been a client with me for 20 years. So our conversation, isn't, as detailed as it could be because we've been doing this for 20 years. But anyways, that's what I hope these interns, when they leave, realize if I become an advisor, I know what it's going to be like, basically. That's what I want them to walk away with. And, if you look at other professions that get paid well, and in our profession, over time, you get paid well. But even like his dad's a doctor, and I'm sure doctors and specialty nurses and that get paid well, but they also see a lot of stuff that's pretty miserable. I mean, I've been in hospitals recently with family members and strategy and all that, and it's not fun. So I kind of think we're pretty lucky to be having a conversation of, hey, when you travel, when you retire, how much you want to spend a year in travel? Well, Europe's $10,000 a person, so let's go $20,000 after I retire for the next 5 years. We plug that in, and it's really about people's dreams and what they want to do, and then hopefully trying to get them to achieve it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I know Jackson kind of touched on that one day in our office that, sometimes in different careers, like you said, the relationship that you might be having with a client or a patient, the circumstances are different. And I think in what you guys do, it's for the most part, it's enjoyable, right? It's helping people plan out their dreams, like you mentioned. And I know, Tom, you've shared a lot of great advice to interns and people potentially going into this industry. But I want to hear from Jackson. What advice would you have to share with other students that might be maybe, feeling an inclination to pursue this career path, or maybe they're unsure? What kind of words of wisdom do you have to share with them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have it all figured out, obviously, but
None of us do.
I think Jerry, said a really insightful piece of information. And I guess Tom, you touched on it too. But if a door's opening for you, walk through it. Like, I try and say yes in my daily life more than I say no. Just because if you say no, you really never know what you're missing out on. And if you say yes, you could go through not fun experience, but at least you're not leaving things on the table. And so, yeah, if you're trying to figure out your career and you don't know where you're going, just, I guess, try to open yourself up to as many experiences as you can. And I think through doing that, eventually you'll find, what you want to do, what you're passionate about, and what makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, I think it's the most important thing. And whether that be, at work, outside of work, like finding things, in tandem that really give your life meaning is super important. So
Thank you, Jackson. I think, dream big, right? And making sure that if you see a door open, try to, at least if it's not open, like Tom says, knock on those doors, and hopefully that is the right career pathway for yourself. I want to thank both of you for participating in the financial world here, because it is part of a STEM field itself, finance, a lot of math, obviously, right? So I want to thank you both for participating, and the listeners out there, I want to thank you as well for listening in. And check us out on our podcast, the STEM Road Podcast, at YouTube, Amazon Music, and Spotify.
I also like to thank you guys, because this internship wouldn't have been available if you guys didn't help support it. So I appreciate you guys supporting us and supporting Jackson and our other intern, Mac.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah,
it's been great. It's been great so far.
So please rate, subscribe, and share the podcast. It'll be out here soon as well. If you're interested in sponsoring us as well, please reach out. We're a 501c3 as well, and we're always available to help those others in need as well, in terms of career pathways, and obviously as we finish our internship program and the Innovation Hub as well. So I want to thank you. And as we're looking at sponsorships and donations, you have something to tell us. I just found out.
Yeah, so basically, we were happy to become a sponsor of Elevate and give to the 501c. And we also support the younger generation, the next generation. They're in charge of taking care of everybody, people's money, healthcare, whatever else. So we're happy to support you, and we advise other businesses out there to support Elevate. They really help and do a great job for the Yuma community.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and we're here to support all the students that we have here locally, and anybody that comes down, so we can change the economy, change the greater Yuma region. So we want to thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.